This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Friday, May 5th, 2023. Again, lots to cover. Let's get into it right away. The first story I want to cover has to do with the unemployment situation. What's going on is a wave of job layoffs, which are permanent, probably. They're certainly not going to go away anytime quickly. The wave of layoffs is going to continue, and the jobs that are terminated aren't coming back anytime near soon. So what's being reported is that largely in the tech industry, but now expanding beyond it. So Shopify just slashed 20% of its workforce. And basically, it's selling off its logistics business. This is a consequential and hard week, Shopify CEO Lutke said in a memo to staffers. It's the right thing for Shopify, but it negatively affects many team members who we admire and love working with. Well, that's always what they say. We've had major layoffs at Meta, Google, finance giants like Goldman Sachs. The downsizing is going on. Twitter made downsizing last year. And so it's going beyond the tech sector. If we take a look at the companies these are just the companies right now announcing new layoffs. We have, I'll just give a quick list here. Shopify, 20% of the workforce. Morgan Stanley, 3,000 jobs. That's one of the big investment banks in New York. Dropbox, 16% of the staff. Gap, more than 2,000 jobs since late last year, retailing. Jenny Craig, mass layoffs in Jenny Craig. And it just goes on and on. At 3M, 6,000 jobs cut. Lyft has 1,000 jobs cut. The list is very extensive. Deloitte, one of the accounting firms, 1,200 jobs cut. This is not really being announced. Whole Foods, several hundred corporate employees gone. And, it just continues. BuzzFeed is 15% of the staff fired. Ernst & Young, another accounting firm, 3,000. When the accounting firms are laying off, it's not a good sign because it means business activity is down. Corporations are employing fewer accountants to get their less and less. I mean, it's a meltdown, as it were, of economic activity, which is taking place. And I'm seeing this is likely to speed up. McKinsey, 1,400 employees. McKinsey is one of the big, again, consulting firms. And when these corporate firms close or start closing or shutting down employees, firing, economic activity is diminishing. And it's not a good sign. Okay, so let's continue with the two or three quick economic stories. The bank problems in the United States, we've had now the regional bank consolidation. These regional banks are failing. It's spreading to Europe. So what we're seeing in Europe is the European Central Bank also hiked rates 25 basis points this week. Inflation is very high in the EU. Core inflation without energy is 7.5% in Europe. I think it's actually higher than what's being reported here in the United States, but the United States is being reported between 5 and 6%. The rate hike, of course, is going to slow down business in Europe, just like it will slow down business here. It's almost like the central banks want to cause a recession because they think that will contain inflation. The problem is that doesn't work because this inflation is not caused by excess demand. It's caused by all the fiat money that was made up and just poured into the economy. The Biden administration must have poured $3 or $4 trillion of deficit spending into the economy, which is just made up, hypothecated, printed money. Actually, they don't even print it anymore. It's just digital money printed. It's just, everybody got checks during the pandemic. Well, that cost a lot of money. that we didn't have in the budget. So therefore, we weren't funding that with taxpayers. We were funding that with the modern monetary theory, this new economic theory that says since it's fiat money, we can have more fiat money created to pay off the debt. And that's where you get to what the European Union is also doing. They're doing this quantitative easing again. They're basically saying they've been wanting to accelerate the quantitative tightening. In other words, getting rid of some of these treasury notes on their balance sheet. But again, they're not going to be able to do that. Their total assets have plunged in the European Central Bank 1.2 trillion. So they are getting rid of some of this debt that they have, these debt instruments, which are assets to them. They're on their balance sheet as assets because they buy a bond. What they're buying is debt from the European Union. But again, when you look at the nature of how these central banks are working, it's basically becoming a Ponzi scheme. And the idea that they can finance their own debt by buying the debt through the central banks it's like living on credit cards. It doesn't work for very long. The ECB holds 4.89 trillion in quantitative easing bonds, securities held for monetary policy purposes. In other words, they're buying their own debt. And that's a lot of bonds. That's a lot of debt to hold. These bonds really fall into two categories: the asset purchase program and the pandemic emergency purchase program. And they are trying to get rid of some of the asset purchase program. But again, even if they get rid of $1 trillion worth of these, they still have something like almost $4 trillion left. So the Ponzi scheme, and by the way, going back to 2008, the European Central Bank only had $1 trillion of bonds of its own debt held. So it was only the entire European Central Bank was a $1 trillion operation. Now today, it's gone into having $4 trillion worth of these bonds, and it's massively financing debt. They'll just print more money to pay off the debt. It's not going to be, as the current word is, sustainable. This is not sustainable. This is a scheme which will ultimately collapse. And the third one I want to cover today is the mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are still stuck at about 6.5%. So that means the housing market is not going to have a good selling season in the spring. And the housing market is now, this is the peak selling time right now, this time of the year. Pending home sales plunged 23% year over year in April. And we've seen it basically looks like in March was 22%. And the situation is getting worse in May. So essentially, what we're seeing is that we're going into a deep decline, that we are now at the lowest in mortgage applications since 1995. We're at a low point in the number of people out there buying houses and getting mortgages. Mortgage rates have not really budged off the 6.5 rate since coming down from the 7% rate last November. And the average contract for the conforming 30-year fixed rate mortgage, conforming meaning suitable to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, one of the federal mortgage agencies, is at 6.5%. Now, that's extremely high. When you go back to 2021, rates were under 3%. They were in the 2.5 to 3% range. Now, the 30-year fixed mortgage is at 6.5%. Well, what that does is it essentially shifts people from buying used homes, which are going to be at inflated values, becomes more worthwhile to buy new homes or to build a home, because again, you can be building homes in a depressed market for purchasing the materials, whereas the housing market, when mortgages get to this point, are going to start having a lot of foreclosures. People aren't going to be able to, if they lose their jobs, if they are in a tight situation, they're basically going to find that what they end up doing is not being able to pay the mortgage monthly. The house goes in arrears. Once you've got 2, 3, 4 months you haven't paid the mortgage, that accumulates to a lot of money, especially when you're not working and getting income. It's a collapsing economy. It's like when a building comes down, one floor after the other, controlled demolition. We're actually, in a sense, going through a controlled demolition of the economy. And a large reason for it is this shift to renewable energy, which is both causing much more money to be printed. We're going to give away billions and billions and billions of dollars on these wind and solar ventures, which are likely not to succeed. They didn't succeed for Obama. They're not going to succeed again. We're going to be forcing the economy, as the EPA is doing right now, to say you've got new tailpipe regulations, and therefore you're going to have to produce 2/3 of all vehicles will have to be electric by 10 years from now, or 9 years from now, 2032, 2033. It's just not feasible. It's a planned demolition, the same way the Federal Reserve is planning to have a slowdown of the economy. They know these rates are going to increase the misery of people trying to run businesses. Credit is going to dry up. And that's going to be a difficult situation for millions of people. And it doesn't have to be this way. We could certainly get back to a more reasonable fiscal policy. When we had Donald Trump stimulating the economy without spending the trillions of dollars that the Biden administration has spent. And we've had the shocks to the economy, the lockdown, we had the shocks to the economy of the supply shortages, and the disruptions with this what they call energy transition to wind and solar, which is much more expensive. And the climate hysterics know it's more expensive. It's why, in fact, they're doing it. I wrote an article this week in American Thinker in which I pointed out that the climate change agenda has been taken over by the neo-Marxists, and they're now writing books about Marx, saying we need degrowth climate issues, that they're trying to use the ecology for degrowth. They want us to have anything that they can see that they see, and I'll cover this in a minute too, anything they can see, can't have cars that are gas cars, got to have electric. Well, the electric has to come from somewhere, and the electric is being generated largely by hydrocarbon fuels. Only about 12% of all the energy we use in the United States, maximum 15%, is solar or wind. The rest is hydrocarbon. This economy runs on the availability of cheap energy, cheap and available and abundant hydrocarbon fuels, which it is. I've consistently said it's not dinosaur soup. If you'll read my book on the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change, you're going to see that the climate science gives you the formulas for producing oil, the chemical formulas. Anyone who's taken chemistry can understand them easily. They're hydrocarbon chains. The Fischer-Tropsch process shows how they're formed. They're formed deep in the earth, where you have a molecule that has carbon, a molecule that has hydrogen, a catalyst like iron oxide, heat and temperature to produce the catalytic reaction, and the hydrogen and the carbon combine in hydrocarbon chains. Different numbers of atoms, different chemical structures, but it produces all these various hydrocarbons, methane, all the way through to there's probably 24 of these chains that can be easily identified. At any rate, and by the way, you'll find methane on Titan, the great moon, one of the great moons of Saturn. Well, there was never anything living on Titan to produce the methane. These are chemical processes that occur naturally, and they're abundant. And we've not run out of them. The people who were saying in the 70s and 80s we're going to run out of oil, we've run out of those people because their theories didn't work. But yet it doesn't deter the environmentalists from believing in these ideas, which are destructive. I really want to encourage two things in our sponsors. I want to take a minute to do that. If you pull down, and Chris, if you'll pull down the Swiss America, and again, every show I'm going to mention this because I want you to understand that if you have some gold, you'll have tangible value. Swiss America has this Walking Liberty $50 offer, which is extremely good. It allows you to get these coins, 250 of them, and basically they're 90% silver. It's a one-time offer for new customers, and you can introduce yourself and buy 250, up to 250 of these coins, and they are extremely, because they are high content in silver. I think silver will actually appreciate more than gold as a percentage quicker, because it's much lower price, $30 for silver, $2,000 or more for an ounce of gold. And if you fill out this form, you'll get contacted by the Swiss America people, and you can begin looking at your consult with them about what your needs are, and you can buy actual gold, silver, platinum. You'll actually get the metal. Now, if you've got dollars here, you could take out $100 out of your wallet if you have them, and those $100 are not what they buy today, are not going to buy that in the future. Not with inflation where it is, and this is not going to go away. The Fed has not stopped inflation. If the Fed stops raising interest rates, the inflation will accelerate. And again, if you have gold, that gold will buy more dollars. The purchasing power of the gold will retain your purchasing power. So have an asset that doesn't depreciate, and that's gold and silver. And it doesn't matter, you don't have to buy hundreds of thousands of dollars of this. You can still hedge your position and improve your wealth, as it were, by owning some. Because in the future, you'll be able to cash that in for greater number of dollars given the increase, and it could double. In the last two crises we've had, 2008 and 9 and 1970s, 80s, those two economic downturns, gold, each of them doubled. And it could do that again. And also, would you please go, Chris, to the Macmillan Agency? This is, I worked on annuities. I did two companies, worked with banks, marketing companies. We sold over $1 billion a year to through banks of annuities. I know annuity markets very well. When interest rates are high, annuities are a good deal. And you can get indexed annuities or universal life insurance, which basically index means it's tied to, say, the Dow Jones or some of the other stock indexes. If that index goes up, you gain money. If that index goes down, you don't lose money, because these are fixed annuities and fixed. They're not variable. They're fixed annuities and fixed universal life. So you've got a guaranteed rate. And that rate's going to pay. The insurance company will pay you that rate, even if your index goes down. Now, the value of an annuity and why you buy an annuity, and if you'll read what Matt is writing, Matt is experienced in doing telephone sales and working with clients. If you'll fill out the form, Chris, if you'll go down and show out the form, Matt will give you quotations and explain to you what's available. They're tax deferred. So again, your earnings on an annuity are not going to be taxed as you earn. It's one of the few instruments of that nature. And if you own an annuity, or if you own a life insurance policy that is old and not paying very well, you can exchange that one. You can exchange any annuity or any life policy by 1035 exchange and not pay tax. And Matt can take you out of an old, low-yielding annuity and put you into a new, higher-yielding annuity. Annuities are a good deal, especially when interest rates are going up. I would not right now recommend the stock market. I think the stock market's going to be a roller coaster. And with banks failing, and I expect a lot more to fail, we're not going to get out of this easily. So these are two things I have on the website to sponsors. And I'm promoting them because I think they're going to do, anyone who takes advantage of these two offers is going to benefit from it. Chris, want to comment on the economics section of what we talked about?
I do note that you brought up something a little bit earlier, and I want to talk about that. Peak oil, the peak oil theory.
Yes.
Where we were supposed to run out at a certain amount of time. I believe it was the 80s at one point and the 90s. And it's almost like Al Gore's predictions of the world ending and the ice caps melting in whatever year was it, 2006. Then it was another year. Then it was another year. The idea is to panic people into control. Basically,
Yeah.
It's a long time political ploy. It's been done since the ancient times. The idea is not to fall for it and listen to the truth.
Well, that's why I'm writing books. That's why this is the Truth Central. And my books are The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. And the next book will be The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy, which explains why we're going through this nonsense. The schools are now teaching Marxism. A couple more stories. This war in Russia is, I think, very disturbing. Right now we're seeing drone attacks. And the drone attacks are very frightening. Some 21 cities in Russia are concerned about Ukraine hitting them with drones made by us or NATO that we've given to Ukraine. It's a proxy war. We're really fighting Russia through Ukraine. And of course, these attacks from the Ukrainians are attacking Russian oil facilities. And they damaged some in Crimea. There was a spectacular fire that was publicized this week from a drone attack in Crimea of a Russian oil facility. And so Russia is now retaliating with the drone strikes on Ukraine, and the drone strikes are coming into Kiev. You had a drone attack against the Kremlin. Putin saying he's going to have drone attacks against Zelensky. If we're going to start talking about assassinating heads of state, this war is going to escalate very fast. And if Ukraine is talking about a new offensive in the spring, Russia is going to retaliate. And the war, I think, is going to escalate. I don't see any signs, and Ukraine is getting destroyed systematically. Their infrastructure for gas and oil, their electricity, transportation, people are abandoning cities because they're not habitable. The buildings are destroyed. They're reducing Ukraine to rubble. And it's very frightening that this war is out of control. Now, I want to do two climate stories. First one, the end of cheap airplane flights. This is what we're talking about. The climate agenda is really an agenda to essentially destroy capitalism. That's what it's really all about. So here the airlines, now ticket prices are going to rise. The European Union has now just decided to impose a whole new series of carbon penalties on the airline industry. European aviation is expected to spend 820 billion euro to reach net zero in 2050. And this includes the European Union emissions trading system. They're doing carbon trading in Europe. And what that's going to mean is that the end of getting cheap airline tickets is gone. They want the airlines to use sustainable fuel. Sustainable aviation, it's an industry alliance with airlines, airports, and manufacturers. They're betting heavily on the sustainable aviation fuel that's produced from sources like agricultural waste. They think that can power 3/4 of the flights, for instance, used in the UK by 2050. Well, I'm waiting to see how that works. Aviation fuel is generally more expensive fuel. It's a more higher octane fuel. It's a whole different formulation than gasoline. And again, if you're going to try to decarbonize the airline industry, it's going to be, again, costly. It's going to mean millions of people in the era of cheap flights were able to travel. They're going to restrict your travel. And this is one way to do it in order to fight climate change. Well, if climate change were really an existential threat to life, I could see taking these extreme measures. But the science of climate change is deeply flawed. Carbon dioxide is now not the controller of Earth's temperature. Again, you've been lied to. And with the educational system, what it is, people are not getting the training or the education they need in order to know that the science is faulty. I mean, it's astounding to me how little people know about basic science, chemistry, physics, even math. I mean, I was trying to explain logarithms the other day, and logarithms used to be taught in high school along with algebra. And I think people are no longer being taught these things in school. We're being taught a radical sexual agenda is much more important. And then this last story I want to cover today is that New York State is banning gas stoves and heaters. The New York State governor just signed a law this week saying that new buildings in New York are going to have to not use any gas stoves or heating, which is pretty much ridiculous. I mean, it's the cheap form of energy, and it is not going to destroy the planet. But the new law is expected to avoid 6.1 million metric tons of carbon emissions by 2040. Now, that sounds like a lot. But again, the Earth absorbs it, and the amount of the atmosphere, when you talk about how many tons of the atmosphere there is, this is minuscule in terms of its addition of carbon to the atmosphere. And so therefore, the law is going to come into effect in 2026 for new buildings under 7 stories and for 2029 for taller buildings. And it means that newly constructed buildings are not going to be able to have gas stoves or gas heat, period. And essentially, New York was the 6th largest gas-consuming state, with gas providing 46% of the state's energy. 3 out of 5 households in 2021 relied on natural gas for heating. If the aim is for New York City and state to achieve zero carbon emissions in their buildings, it's going to be a dramatic impact on the costs of building materials and already the commercial real estate market is dying. The buildings are vacant. All these measures are only going to depress economic activity. And so therefore, we're going into a very, very serious and deep recession. And the last thing I want to mention is a positive. Then we'll talk with Chris for a minute because I want to get a couple of humorous points in here, but you got to have some humor when all this news is so grim. But My Vital C, which is also one of our sponsors, I also really recommend you try it. The forms are right. Just click one of the buttons in My Vital C, and you can buy some for yourself, for your pets. It's Carbon 60. There's a lot of information on Carbon 60 on the website. It's kind of a miracle molecule. It's not FDA approved. It's a supplement, but I've been taking it for 4 years. It dramatically increases your energy. It improves longevity, your chances to live longer. It's an antioxidant. It's an anti-inflammatory. These are 2 of the major problems with aging is you need antioxidants to remove the free radicals, these molecules that are destructive from your body. And you need anti-inflammatories. A lot of health problems are caused by inflammation. I've taken, I can tell you from my personal experience, Carbon 60, My Vital C works. This company was the hair growth products. They have creams. I use all the products, and I swear by them. I think they're just true. And a lot of people who tried them find that they become part of their daily routine. And if it makes you feel better, that's good enough reason to give it a try. And the products are reasonably priced. You just click the buttons. You can order some directly from My Vital C. They're very nicely packaged, very nicely made, and I think you'll enjoy them. I know I certainly do. Chris, what do you think of everything we reported today? It's Friday. We've had a week here, and we've had war and economic disruption. I think we're going to have more.
Well, talking about Governor Hochul and her new idea, it's a ban. It's not a new idea. It's been the latest pandemic or pathogen to pass around the local left. The idea of banning gas stoves. This,
Yeah,
I when Andrew Cuomo was forced to resign, and I'll say forced to resign because of pressure and possibility of his family legacy being burnt to heck. I was one of those many New York voters who thought, hey, this is great. He's gone. He can't destroy the state anymore. He can't overspend anymore. How much worse could the next person be?
much worse.
I'm telling you, we thought she was going to be Cuomo light. The fact is, she's worse. She's spending more. She's just put together another huge PC spending package, and now this.
How do these people get so crazy? I mean, let's not eat meat. Let's eat bugs. How crazy is that?
Except for them. You see, that's the thing. I always call it Mike's Clause 82. It was from a British comedy called The Young Ones. Mike was one of the students. He always said, it was 83. Read Clause 83. And it was always except for Mike. And that's what it is. Just same thing with the air flights. You're going to put the new, more expensive fuel in there. The idea is to keep us, the regular people, off the plane, so the elites can ride them alone, get more leg room, or maybe fly their private jets around in a freer airspace.
Well, and the thing is, people put up with this because it happens so gradually, a little bit of here, a little bit there. Pretty soon, it's all gone. So freedom is lost. And I think we, essentially have to take steps that are positive for human beings and positive for stimulating and life. This can be a very productive and enjoyable place. Of course, if you can't eat meat, you have to live in a 15-minute city. You have to own a very heavy, expensive car that runs on electricity. If everything runs on electricity and they turn off the electricity, what do you do with all this stuff? If we all have digital currency and it's all numbers in a bank and no paper currency, no gold, no silver, not even, and the currency is not backed by gold or silver, what good is it? So one day they turn off the banking, or you go outside your 15-minute city and your electronics don't work anymore, so you can't get in touch with your money. I mean, it's insane. Why would anybody, look at how good this stuff is. Look at how great, look, we all use this technology. Isn't it wonderful? Yeah, well, it's wonderful because we've got electricity. If we don't have electricity, this stuff is junk.
Exactly. The funny thing about these 15-minute cities, we kind of have them in major cities. They're just bigger bubbles, or they're neighborhoods. They're smaller bubbles. The idea is cities have become, or at least many urban areas and neighborhoods have become bubbles where people ideologically just don't travel outside of that bubble. They get most of their supplies from there. They interact there. Not many people think city folk are the cosmopolitan types, but a lot of them really don't leave their physical and ideological bubble, especially now that items and food can be delivered to them at a even more conveniently than 5-6 years ago.
Right. You get food brought to your door. You can get groceries brought to your door. You can get anything you want through Amazon brought to your door. I mean, basically, they are making it so that, and going back centuries, people didn't travel very much, but they were free. They could if they wanted to. And now, if you're restrained from it, if the control factors are not in the hands of people, but they're hands of government, and the governments are these nameless, unelected bureaucrats who make rules ideologically. I mean, I'm going to pull off one end this week. I want to pull a book from behind me here on the shelf. 1 second.
There's a lot of books there. That's always good.
Oh,
and now you know
lots of books.
See, the good thing is, people have to know that this is not a fake background you have. Those are real.
Oh,
books.
these are.
A lot of people use that fake background with the books to make themselves look smart.
These are real books. Okay. All right. Now this one, this one is my new current favorite. This book here. Put me back on it. There we go. Marx in the Anthropocene. It's written by a Japanese Marxist, and he is talking about degrowth communism. Degrowth communism. And that means that, he's saying essentially we want to have the capitalist system destroyed. So he's now attacking sustainability. He said the sustainability. So what's going to happen now is these people are going to start attacking solutions. So we say, okay, well, we can have carbon capture. Well, they don't want carbon capture. They want you to quit using hydrocarbon fuels. We can adapt hydrocarbon fuels to emit less carbon dioxide. Well, they don't want that. They don't want a solution. They want us to utilize things that don't work. And so therefore, a division is happening in the climate movement between the people who really understand what it's about, who are the Marxists, and the left, who've been conned into thinking this is about saving the planet, trying to come up with solutions. The Marxists don't want solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to fight against the people who think it can be solved. But that's okay, because we've got a president. They had the most powerful man in the world doesn't know where he is half the time.
I don't know. Xi Jinping seems to know where he is a lot of times.
Yeah. Well,
Joe
Biden needs help to get out of a room.
He can eat an ice cream, though. I mean, he eats it pretty well.
Oh yeah, he smells little girls all the time too. He does lots of things all the time. But the guy's creepy, and you're getting to, this is really elder abuse, making the guy go through all this nonsense. At any rate, what kind of country is it that has someone who is showing obvious signs of dementia is running for re-election? I mean, I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to have a field day with this stuff.
But the party itself, think about it. Think the party elite does not have a better candidate.
Well, again, they want the person or the group running things to be unseen. This is Barack Obama used to say, wouldn't it be nice to be president and have someone else as a figurehead who would do the ceremonial parts of the job while the power was done by me in the background my own way? Unaccountability. So we're going through a great insanity in the world right now, where things I'll pull another book off the shelf of, the popular delusions that have eluded mankind for centuries. Let's all go off of the Crusades. Let's leave our families. Let's all walk from Europe to the Holy Land, and let's kill Muslims so we can take back the Holy Land for Christianity. And it's insane. It's like it's not necessarily, the religion shouldn't be about capturing territory or killing people or leaving your families and going off for years walking around Europe with these mobs.
Oh, they didn't have planes back then.
Mobs.
Just keep in mind they didn't have planes back then. And the new there's always that news thing. The information got to.
Okay, we've gone
right,
too long today. We got carried away.
High-speed horses.
Okay. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. Sanity will return to the earth. Sometimes I fear what we're going to have to go through to get there. But in the end, God always wins, and God will win again. We'll be back next Monday. We're broadcasting every day in the weekdays. Thank you for joining us. God bless, and we'll see you Monday. Dr. Jerome Corsi, thank you.